Those who have encountered ghosts know that they aren't as terrifying as they seem. Not only do they fear the light of day, but they also dare to return to the darkness of night. As for me, to prove that a new ghost is the strongest being, I have taken on the role of a ghost in a haunted house. When I change my hairstyle and wear a red shirt, people immediately think of me as a new Sadako. When I wear old, ugly clothes and hold a camera, I look just like a haunted figure. All of this is thanks to my connection to the strongest ghost system. As long as I can attract visitors to the haunted house, I can earn points and upgrade it. Since my grandfather passed away, I inherited this haunted house. The rent has never exceeded 300 Te. Just when I was wondering whether I should close the doors or not, a voice rang out. Master, how much does your haunted house ticket cost? I answered instinctively, 10 Te per person, with a 20% discount for 3 people. Without hesitation, I sent them the payment code. At that moment, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope in my heart. Strict customers often come to challenge me. If my haunted house isn't scary enough, it could all be over. So, I told my female staff member, Tiu Yen, please continue to welcome the guests. I'll handle it on my own. I added. Tiu Yen was a little scared upon hearing this. Master, you're going alone? Just then, a shy girl asked, Sister, is it scary to have a haunted house with a PC? As if to reassure her, I smiled and said, It's okay, don't worry, this haunted house isn't scary at all. I then entered the changing room and put on a blood-stained shirt. At that very moment, the system's voice echoed in my mind. Emergency killer ability activated. Suddenly, a cold, bloodthirsty energy filled my body. Tiu Yen, being very careful, took out some notes and said, Everyone, please wait a moment. My master is preparing. After reading, she took out 4 small bells. If you're scared or can't find the way out, shake these bells, and I will guide you out immediately. One girl replied, That's not necessary. We're very professional. Lu Nhu Tuyat heard her and added, Yes, that's right. We're very professional. Tiu Yen laughed and said, Just take them, it's the rule. Under her persuasion, all 4 girls put the bells on their bodies. Then, Lu Tiu Yen explained, The drawing for everyone consists of 2 scenes. One is the girl in the red shirt, and the other is Akmadamua. In this scene, Akmadamua will have a PC, and my master will be waiting there. Everyone should remember the story. Lu Nhu Tuyat heard this and said, She mentioned that before, so there's nothing to be afraid of. With that, the 4 girls stepped into the corridor, laughing and joking as they made their way to the blood drinking room. The atmosphere was light and cheerful. As they entered, they laughed and pushed the door. Stepping into the first scene, Akmadamua in red greeted them as they entered a small house, where a red lantern hung and a sign was displayed. Guided by Lu Nhu Tuyat, the group went straight into the house, beginning their search for the key to open the next door. At that moment, the youngest girl screamed, Here is Akmadamua. On the bed sat a man wearing a headscarf. Sitting up straight, Lu Nhu Tuyat quickly went to calm her down, saying, It's just a prop. She then took the plant from Akmadamua's hair, which was the key to opening the box. Another girl pointed to a box on the table, saying, Here's the key box. Afterward, Lu Nhu Tuyat inserted the plant, revealing a key inside. Seeing this, Lu Nhu Tuyat sighed with relief. No need to worry, it's easy. She then led the 4 girls out of the red room where Akmadamua was. At that moment, Lu Nhu Tuyat spoke again. There will be an NPC here. The owner might be fake, not real. Later, let's pretend a little, so the owner doesn't lose face. After all, the owner is quite poor. Let's give him a sense of success. Lu Nhu Tuyat's words were met with understanding, and the group continued. As they stepped through the door, a voice came through the speaker. Today, a taxi driver was killed in the car. The police have arrived for investigation. As the scene unfolded, Lu Nhu Tuyat noticed the bodies of the 4 girls. A picture appeared on the TV, showing the scene where the 4 girls were killed. One of the girls shuddered as the blood-soaked atmosphere set in. In the corner, a shadow appeared, someone covered in blood. holding a tree branch stained with blood. This is our picture, the girl whispered, shivering. Lu Nhu Tuyet immediately reassured her. There's nothing to be afraid of. Look, there's a camera at the door. That's the picture. But look, our clothes are completely different. The girl responded quickly. Oh, it seems that's true. Lu Nhu Tuyet then led the group to the next scene. A narrow street with a few shops. At the end of the road, a taxi drove by. Lu Nhu Tuyet asked, "Do you believe this? Later, someone will hit that taxi. And then you'll see us." One girl shrugged and replied, "Yes, it's too late. They will chase us." But suddenly, a shadow appeared in front of them. The figure looked at them with a surprised expression. "Ah, you came in? I'm not ready yet." Lu Nhu Tuyet immediately responded. "Boss, you're too slow. We've been waiting outside for so long. And the NPC hasn't changed yet. You're so unprofessional." I hurriedly laughed and said, "Sorry, everyone wait for me for just 5 more minutes. I'll be ready soon." Lu Nhu Tuyet replied, "All right, we'll wait for you at the door." So, the 4 girls returned to the door. At this point, one of the girls said, "Hey, we need to avoid this bomb. This ghost house is too boring." Lu Nhu Tuyet nodded in agreement. "Right, I'll post it on the wall for everyone to avoid." She then posted on the timeline, saying, "In the ghost house. But the boss hasn't changed yet. It's too boring. I'm coming in to destroy the island in 20 minutes. She attached her location. And soon, someone commented, "Nhu Tuyet. I'm also at this amusement park. I'll be there in 2 hours." Lu Nhu Tuyet replied immediately, "20 more minutes. Wait for my review." After hanging up the phone, she said, "Let's go in." At that moment, another girl asked, "I don't know if the boss is ready yet." Lu Nhu Tuyet heard that and said, "No need to wait for the boss to prepare. Let's just destroy the island." With that, everyone had no further objections. There were only 8 stores in total. So they went in. Lu Nhu Tuyet immediately headed for the nearest small store. There wasn't much inside, and she quickly finished checking it. Just as Lu Nhu Tuyet was about to move on to the next store, one of the girls suddenly nodded. Lu Nhu Tuyet quickly reacted and ran toward the room. At that moment, I was lying on the ground, holding a kitchen knife. The sight of this shocked all the girls. What is going on? Why is the boss lying on the ground? Wasn't it supposed to be a star shape? Lu Nhu Tuyet immediately reacted and rushed to save me. But just then, a knock came at the door, growing louder, as if a ghost were whispering in my ear. One of the girls saw a black light outside the window. Someone was outside. Quickly running away. Seeing that, Lu Nhu Tuyet rushed outside, with the other 3 girls following her. Something wasn't right. The boss was lying on the ground, so who was knocking at the door? I slowly got up, still young, and took my clothes from the drawer, putting them on. Then, holding a tree branch, I crushed it hard against the ground before turning to face the 4 girls. Lu Nhu Tuyet turned her head and looked, but was met with a ball of blood. She could even smell the blood from the ball, as if a real murderer was present. She ran quickly, but one of the girls slipped and fell to the ground. The ball of blood let out an eerie laugh. The tree branch struck the girl's side with force. Lu Nhu Tuyet and the others were shocked. It was clear now that this was no actor, but a real murderer. I'm not ready yet. How is that possible? I thought. I had been waiting for these 4 girls for a long time. And when I saw them acting so professionally over the red-shirted girl, I had temporarily adjusted my actions and changed the script. Now, in front of me, one girl had fallen to the ground, screaming. At that moment, I became a devil. The blood-soaked atmosphere and the scent of blood on my body made her gasp for air. The devil had just killed the master, and now it seemed that I was going to kill her too. I immediately ran toward her. The girl screamed for an hour before finally fainting. At that moment, the system's voice sounded, "You have received 10 points of deafening." Immediately after, I pulled the tree branch, breaking a blood-stained iron rod, and made my way back toward the other 2 girls. The sound of the iron scraping the ground made everyone panic. I didn't run. I walked slowly. Like a true perverse killer. Meanwhile, the two girls hid behind a trash can, trembling and hugging each other. The sound of rustling came closer and closer, as if another devil was approaching them. The rustling grew louder. The killer was right outside the trash can. The two girls held their breath, afraid that their fear would be noticed. The atmosphere grew tense. Suddenly, the sound grew faint. One girl sighed in relief and instinctively said, "Let's go then." The other girl glanced outside. The street was deserted. "Let's hurry outside," she said, and she opened the trash can, ready to leave. But at that moment, a faint smell of blood wafted from behind them. Both girls froze, shivering. Then, a loud roar echoed. Behind them, a blood-stained bandage appeared, swinging an iron rod at the ground. A blood-soaked aura immediately surrounded the two girls, and they stared at the devil with pale faces. The sound of the iron rod echoed again. At the same time, the rod hit the ground with a sharp clang. I picked up the rod again and struck the two girls. At that moment, both girls were struck, and they collapsed, unable to react in time. The iron rod hit the ground, and they both fainted. "Little Yen, the night devil has already knocked out 3 customers. Go inside and wake them up," a voice called. Little Yen, shaking in place, felt her ghostly presence wasn't enough to scare the girls into fainting. "How can I make them faint like this?" she thought. Meanwhile, those watching from outside heard the girls' screams, and their excitement grew. "Hey, your ghost has a new trick. Give me a drawing. I want to go in too. Can I come in now?" A young man wearing glasses adjusted his glasses and asked, "What do you want to do? I'm not tricking you anymore. Just give me a drawing, and I'll go in to check it out," the young man insisted. Little Yen, trying to calm the situation, said, "Don't panic. I'll go inside and take the 3 guests out." With that, she took the key and went in. As soon as Little Yen opened the door, she was shocked to see the girls lying on the floor. She hurried to help one of them, only to find that she was still unconscious. Just as Little Yen was about to go for a wheelbarrow to carry them out, a shadow appeared behind her. She screamed, causing a jolt of surprise to run through me as well. Little Yen quickly swallowed her saliva and took 2 steps back. "Master, your temperament is really getting scary now," she said. I immediately realized that the system's reward had really worked wonders. "All right, you take these guests out and call the amusement park's medical staff. I'll go and serve the last audience guest," I replied. At this point, Little Yen was hiding in the corner behind Little Red Riding Hood. She thought to herself that they wouldn't last much longer. Initially, she had intended to run, but once again, she got lost, so she could only hide near Little Red Riding Hood. The doorbell rang, growing louder as it moved closer. Little Yen quickly pulled out her phone and began sending messages. Chung Sun Amusement Park. NHA Ma City. Van. Has a suspect. The killer is on the scene. Police, please come quickly to assist. I'm hiding in the area of Ms. Doe. Without hesitation, she sent the message to the hotline, 110. The response was quick. Hotline 110 has received your message. Police are on their way. In this situation, Little Yen didn't dare to make a direct call. She could only hide there, not even daring to turn up the screen brightness for fear of being discovered. Meanwhile, a man named Jiang On pushed open a window and saw a girl lying on the bed. She was dressed in a red wedding dress, with blood on her face. Jiang On immediately moved closer and sat next to the girl, asking, "Where is the killer? Where is the injured child?" Just then, Tiu Lu entered and saw the scene. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Sister Jiang, you're holding a doll. What are you saying?" "It's just a doll wearing a red wedding dress." Jiang On shook her head in confusion. "What doll? This is clearly a beautiful girl," she said, but was quickly shocked by what she saw. "What are you talking about?" she asked, standing up and taking a step back. A wave of fear swept through her. How could this happen? How could both of us be wrong? As an FBI agent with 4 years of experience, she didn't believe in ghosts. But this was something she couldn't explain. Without hesitation, she pulled out a set of talismans and said, "Report to Captain Vong." Please tell the team to wear poison-proof masks. I suspect the killer has unleashed a ghost trap in the haunted house. Lu Kai and I are stuck here, unable to find the victim. We need support." Before she could finish, she was interrupted. "Sister Jiang, Han is here." Tiu Lu cried out. They both turned to see the doll wearing the red wedding dress slowly standing up. Its mouth twitched as it began to sing. "Mom, look at my red wedding dress. Please don't let me die." The two looked at each other, confirming that they hadn't been mistaken. Their faces went pale as they realized the truth. Meanwhile, I was tearing up and feeling the heat in my mouth. The customers were frozen in shock. But I was pleased with the effect. I slipped back through the secret door to the scene of the red wedding dress. To add to the impact, I even turned on the speaker. At that moment, 3 police cars arrived outside, and more than 10 FBI agents stepped out. They immediately began setting up a perimeter, blocking the haunted house and preparing to arrest the suspect. Finally, the time had come. The killer had been hiding for so long. The FBI agents began donning protective clothing and preparing to enter the haunted house to provide support. Just then, Lu Tiuyen returned from the medical room. Her face pale, she pushed her way through the crowd and approached the closest FBI agent. "I'm an employee of this haunted house. What happened?" she asked. The FBI agent was busy setting up a barrier to secure the area and did not respond immediately. Immediately, Captain Vong responded. "There is an employee here. An employee of this haunted house." An FBI agent, around 50 years old, stepped forward, glancing at Lu Tiuyen's face and confirming. "She's an employee of this store." Lu Tiuyen nodded excitedly, saying, Yes, that's me." The FBI agent, identified as Captain Vong, asked sternly, "Have the injured people been treated? What's the situation now? Turn on the surveillance cameras. Our police are about to move in." At this point, Lu Tiuyen was confused. "Injured people? Surveillance cameras? What attack? What's going on with our haunted house?" she asked. Captain Vong, speaking seriously, explained. A police officer reported seeing a killer in the haunted house. According to the report, the owners of the house were killed an hour ago. Lu Tiuyen, still frightened, responded. "But half an hour ago, I saw the owner." After explaining and reviewing the surveillance footage, the misunderstanding was cleared up. Captain Vong sighed in relief and ordered, "Team 7, the owner is pretending, don't harm him." Before Lu Tiuyen could say anything else, a scream cut her off, coming from the team. The screams echoed throughout the room. Jiang On had accidentally electrocuted herself with her flashlight. She was so scared that, while moving forward, she tripped and fell to the ground, accidentally shocking herself. I was stunned when I saw them. I hadn't even begun yet, but people were already getting electrocuted. Then, I heard the sound of a helicopter. "Everyone inside the haunted house, please exit immediately. The police have surrounded the house. Please come out slowly. Hands on your head. Cooperate with the police," the loudspeaker announced. "The police are on a mission. Please comply immediately." I saw 2 people lying on the ground, now wearing police badges. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Could these 2 be real police officers? Just then, the voice of the system rang in my head. "You have received 40 points. Mission complete. The police are real." I quickly took out my phone, opened Baidu, and searched for news about the haunted house owner. It said the owner had threatened the police, causing fainting and imprisonment for several years, and I wondered if the indictment could be reduced. Meanwhile, Captain Vong Niem Mat, having just heard Jiang On's scream, knew that something serious must have happened. If a policewoman trained for tests and with vast experience could scream like that, it meant something was very wrong. Team 7, what happened over there? Please respond immediately. Jiang On, please respond, Captain Vong said, his voice tense. But in response, there was only rustling, no clear answer. The team leader, Vong, immediately tensed up, sensing something was terribly wrong. "All police, attention, immediately block off this haunted house. Prepare for a riot, and light up the powerful flashlights. Team leader Vong commanded over the main channel. There is a dangerous situation inside the haunted house. Prepare to rescue. Helicopters will continue to search the surrounding area, regardless of whether assassins are present or not. The biggest problem right now is that we've lost contact with our officers inside. The response came swiftly from the conversation. Team 1. Received. Team 3. Received. At the same time, all the police who had been standing relaxed just moments before now shifted into a tense, ready to fight posture, preparing for an attack at any moment. The crowd outside watched in silence, sensing the seriousness of the situation. It seemed that there were reports of a missing officer inside the haunted house. This master really seems to be at the peak of human abilities, whispered one person in the crowd, still in shock over the events unfolding. At that moment, someone nervously asked, "Police, why do you need to attack? This is just a misunderstanding." "The misunderstanding has been resolved. So why attack now?" Team leader Vong responded coldly. "Our officers rushed into the haunted house. And then we lost contact. They were trained, but the haunted house could have scared them." He then asked, "Now, to confirm once more, inside the haunted house, it's just the master and a college student, correct?" Lu Tiuyen nodded. With that confirmation, team leader Vong immediately left the surveillance room, grabbing a flashlight and preparing for action. The police teams were all equipped with short guns, ready for whatever came next. As the police surrounded the haunted house, tension filled the air, flashlights cut through the darkness, and more than 10 officers aimed their guns into the sky, while 2 shotguns were pointed from a helicopter circling above. Just as team leader Vong was about to give the order to attack, a shadow appeared at the end of the path. It was me, dressed in a normal shirt. I was pushing a cart with 2 police officers and a girl lying unconscious on it. I stopped at the door and laughed loudly. These 3 guests were scared to death by me. Inside, it seems like some of the brothers were probably caught off guard and scared too. I raised my hands in mock surrender, smiling broadly. "Everyone, put your guns down. It's not that dangerous." The tension in the air was palpable. The police, still on high alert, pointed their guns at me. But my reaction caught them off guard. The entire group was stunned. How could the haunted house be this terrifying? It had already scared 6 people. Team leader Vong, hearing the report, was about to pull the officers out. 2 hours later, at the police station, Jiang On woke up. After receiving orders, she handed over the case to Lady Dixon, the officer in charge of the interview. Jiang On explained, "I was just playing the role of the killer. It was part of our haunted house project. The character Akma Demua was played by one of our staff members. But only certain people were allowed to portray the killer." Before Jiang On could finish her explanation, I acted out my response. I placed a heavy gas barrel near her, releasing natural gas into the room, sealing it and trapping Jiang On and the 2 police officers inside the interrogation room. In that moment, I was no longer just a man. I had become a ghost from hell. Even in the air, there was a faint smell of blood. The 2 police officers behind Jiang On nervously raised and lowered their hands. Seeing this, I immediately took out the gas. "Police, I really did that," I said, watching their reaction. People don't believe I'm easy to trick when acting. After saying this, the atmosphere gradually calmed down. Jiang On asked again, "First, how did you know about those 2 girls hiding in the trash can? Second, we didn't discover the substance causing the trash can's effect. Why do my colleagues and I all see that doll turn into a real person?" I answered honestly, "My phone has a camera that monitors the inside of the haunted house. As for the doll, it's all a fake. Our haunted house is designed in such a way that it creates a highly realistic experience." Jiang On was surprised. "So why did a girl earlier and my colleagues all feel there was a person standing above their feet?" she asked. Hearing her question, I too felt a shiver run down my spine. Should I create such an illusion? Is there really something in the haunted house? My face darkened as I pondered her words. I left the police station, the overwhelming feeling still lingering in the air. The situation was hard to explain and could only be attributed to illusions and tricks. I decided to take a taxi to Fuang Sun. On the way there, I leaned back in the seat, my mind racing. I finally said, Mr. Tai, you're an employee of Fuang Sun Entertainment Park. Do you know that the ghost house there is haunted? The police came and took the master away. Once you get there, remember to stay away from the area. It may not be safe. Mr. Tai replied. I was confused. What do you mean by, not clean? I asked, trying to control my emotions and pretend to be curious. Mr. Tai, can you tell me more details? Mr. Tai, eager to talk, leaned in closer and whispered. I'll tell you some insider news. The ghost house in Van City was originally a very normal one. Nothing scary, but after the owner passed away, his nephew inherited it. He found out that his grandfather's wish was to make the ghost house successful. And to do that, it needed real ghosts. So, the nephew started killing people and raising ghosts, turning the haunted house into a terrifying place. Mr. Tai took a deep breath before continuing. Do you know there were rumors that the police arrested him because of this? I froze. So, you're saying you're the master of that haunted house? I asked. Suddenly, the scent of blood filled the air. A stream of blood locked onto Mr. Tai, and I coldly told him. Step on the floor, stop the car, get out, I won't take your money. I smiled, got out of the car, and as soon as the door closed, Mr. Tai sped off, faster than when he had picked me up. I stood outside Fuang Sun, realizing I hadn't lost any money. I left 10 taels of cash on the seat before walking away. I hurried back to the ghost house, anxious that this bad news might bankrupt it. When I arrived, there was no one around, except Lu Tiuyen, who stood sadly at the counter. When she saw me, her face lit up, and she shouted, Master, are you okay? I was angry and slapped her. How could I return if there was a problem? Go to school first. I'll transfer this month's salary to your WeChat later. Tomorrow is Saturday, continue working. Lu Tiuyen, initially worried about the possibility of the haunted house going bankrupt, now felt relieved. Master, you go first, she said. I grabbed the flashlight and headed to the back of the haunted house. To the room with the red-shirted bride. I opened the door and immediately heard a woman crying. The doll suddenly sat up on the bed. I immediately approached her. This movement seemed like a normal part of the haunted house's props. But this device was set up by me. I had placed an infrared camera outside the door. I checked the system. I hadn't activated this doll yet. At this point, I looked closely at the doll. Could there really be something unclean about it? The doll seemed to be crying, as if it had been woken by music. I didn't get closer to the doll at first, but I noticed its legs had scratches. Initially, I had left the doll lying still on the bed, but now, half of its body was stuck in the bed frame. The next moment, a cold breeze brushed past me. I stood still as the doll continued crying. The automatic system had been set to trigger after 1 minute, but the doll had been crying for almost 6 minutes now. I took a deep breath and said, this crying sound is a bit faint. Should I take it out and check if the speaker is broken? Before I could make a move, the crying sound grew louder, as if the speaker was working fine. Along with the crying sound, I felt a cold chill on my back. I pretended as though I hadn't heard anything, but the crying grew louder. So, I took the doll out. As soon as I did, the crying sound became more intense. This time, I could hear more sadness in the sound. It was louder, more desperate. At that moment, I stood up, satisfied, but deep down, I felt uneasy. The doll's crying sounded perfect on the surface, but in my heart, something wasn't right. The crying wasn't touching enough. Was it the sound, or something else? I didn't hesitate to adjust the doll's neck, wanting to make the cry even more haunting. The sound became louder, but still, I wasn't satisfied. Why didn't it strike me the way it should? I heard another loud cry, one that seemed to pierce through the room, desperate and filled with despair. This time, I knew it wasn't enough. I adjusted the doll once more, hoping to get it just right. As I made the adjustments, the system's voice rang in my mind. You've received 3 points of disapproval. I paused, holding my breath, but the surface of my skin felt triumphant. I picked up a pen and wrote on the doll's head. This crying, though sad, Lacks the disappointment and despair of being forced by family. The system responded again. You've received 5 points of disapproval. A new wave of crying followed, this time sounding as though it could reach into the deepest parts of one's heart. It was like a woman, pushed to the brink by her family, finally succumbing to despair. It wasn't just crying anymore, it was a haunting wail. Yet, I wasn't moved. Instead, I picked up a pen and moved it to the doll's neck. This fake blood still wasn't enough. The tears of blood didn't seem real enough. So I removed it and replaced it. The system chimed in. You've received 10 points of disapproval. Despite the sense of calm on my face, there was a plan forming in my mind. I didn't hesitate. I picked up a nail and placed it in the bed. Then removed the entire bed and replaced it with a new one. Then set it on fire. The system chimed once more. You've received 20 points of disapproval. Now, the doll's eyes began to shed tears of blood as though it were crying real tears. The blood slowly flowed down, dripping onto my face. I pinched the doll and whispered, "Are you a fairy or a soul born by this doll?" But the answer was only silence. The doll remained lifeless, just like any ordinary doll. I picked up a pen again and wrote, "The tears of blood were fake." The fake blood wasn't enough. The doll responded, 2 tears of blood flowing from its eyes, as though revealing that the blood was indeed fake. But no need to remove it. I slowly pinched the doll and muttered, "Don't lie to me. I've been painting this doll for almost 3 years. Where did you get the fake blood? You're a ghost, aren't you?" At that moment, the doll stiffened completely, and the atmosphere grew tense. I counted to 10. "If you don't come out, I'll remove you myself." I had nothing to fear from this ghost. If she truly wanted to harm me, she would have done it long ago. Now, she was just waiting for me to confront her. Clearly, she was a ghost. A woman's voice suddenly shouted, "Don't remove me." My face became serious. "Come out and return to your original form," I commanded, my voice firm. The doll, wearing a red dress, sat up. Her eyes were wide open, and there was no expression on her face. The red scarf was removed, and I asked seriously, "What are you?" The doll opened her mouth. Her voice changed. "I am Hoang On On. This is my house." Before I could respond, the system's voice rang out, "Congratulations. The owner has discovered the soul. You can now convince the red scarf. Please convince her to bring a surprise." Before I could finish, the doll stood up and knelt in front of me. "Please don't remove me. My life is connected to this bed. If you remove me, I will die." The system chimed again. "Congratulations. The owner has convinced the soul of the red scarf. Hoang On On's loyalty is 60%. The horror of the red scarf increased by 50%. I turned to the doll. "Tell me your story." Hoang On On began to speak, her voice soft but filled with sorrow. "The story of the red scarf is almost the same as my own background. I was forced to give birth to a prince. But my family's name was used to make my brothers happy. On our wedding night, I was not convinced. In the end, I hit my head on the bed, and my soul got stuck in the wooden pillow, transforming me into a doll." The atmosphere darkened as she continued. "Now, whenever guests come, I scare them. But please, remember to never leave this room. I must go to bed early. But I enjoy scaring people." At that moment, the door opened. "Master, is there anyone in there? We want to challenge your ghost at night." Outside, 4 young men and 3 older ones stood, looking hesitant. One of the younger men looked at his friends and began to analyze the ghost house. "There are 7 people here." Suddenly, the room filled with the sound of a desolate woman crying. The air thickened with a suffocating smell, followed by the scent of vomit. At the dormitory of Weijiang Tan University, the little girl was the most frightened when she said, "Ms. Nhu Tuyet, look, those guys really came to the ghost house to cause trouble." At that moment, Nhu Tuyet was eating. She had been so scared earlier in the afternoon that she hadn't had an appetite all day. But now, a little hungry, she decided to order food from outside the dormitory. Lu Nhu Tuyet glanced at the screen, worry in her eyes, and said, "They must be scared too. But they've mentally prepared themselves. They probably think it's not a real killer, so they'll likely get through it without much trouble." seeing Mr. Lu Hongchut taking the same approach as she did when she first came to the dormitory. Lu Nhu Tuyat realized that these 4 people were all professional ghost hunters. In fact, the most practical course of action would be to destroy the haunted house as soon as possible. Of course, this method only applied to brave teams. Just as Lu Nhu Tuyat was about to express her concerns, she suddenly heard a cry. Hoo hoo! The cry echoed, followed by the sound of music. Lu Nhu Tuyat raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why is there crying? This music always plays like that. But it doesn't sound the same as when we came in." She wanted to send a message to thank the 4 guys for their efforts. But the little girl shook her head. No, they've turned off the comments. At that moment, Mr. Lu pushed the door open, clearly unimpressed. "This is boring. Can you see this? This ghost house clearly has no technique. And the props are too cheap." He opened the door and even inspected the red paint on it. Mr. Lu was right. The paint was of very poor quality. The people watching the live stream began to get frustrated. But then, something strange happened. Mr. Lu froze in place. The red paint on the door began to bleed, as though the door itself had a wound. The blood seemed to come to life, making everyone uneasy. Mr. Lu stepped back, letting out a scream. The 3 other guys turned their heads, confused. "What's wrong?" one of them asked. Mr. Lu quickly composed himself and tried to cover up his fear. "It's okay. I was wrong. Let's go. Get ready to act," one of the others said. "I'll head to the middle area." Mr. Lu intended to block the way, so they would all act together. But he couldn't speak up. The words were already said, and the group split up to search the rooms. "If you find anything later, call each other immediately. We need to break down this ghost house," Mr. Lu said to the others. They nodded in agreement before each heading in different directions. Mr. Lu watched them leave and then turned in the direction he had chosen. Suddenly, he smiled. It was only 4 people just now. But something felt off. A cold chill crept up from behind him, spreading through his body. He turned around and saw that no one was in the yard anymore. The 4 people had gone into different rooms and closed the doors behind them. Then, the yard door suddenly slammed shut. Mr. Lu stepped back, eyes wide. He stared at the closed door, feeling the weight of the situation. Who was out there, he wondered. He tried to remember the details, but he couldn't recall anyone's face clearly. Moreover, the back door had suddenly closed again. Could it be a ghost? His thoughts were racing. This door doesn't look scary. It could just be a ghost. Maybe the young owner is hiding somewhere, laughing at us. But now, he wasn't sure which room might have one more person inside. The safest course of action would be to join the others in one of the other rooms. He thought that an empty room, without any NPCs, would be the safest choice. With that in mind, Mr. Lu decided to push open the door of another room. Meanwhile, people watching the live stream started laughing. "Haha, what is Mr. Lu doing? I don't think Mr. Lu is very strong. I saw him push open the door on camera. I know he's live streaming. But it's okay. The camera can't film the ghosts." One viewer continued. "Earlier, the police watched the surveillance cameras and didn't spot anything. This could become a real attraction for customers. Mr. Lu is also treating the live stream as free advertising for the ghost house." Mr. Lu pushed open the door. As he entered, a tear came to his eye. The red wedding bed came into view, elegant, yet eerie. This was the room. Looking at the doll lying on the bed, Mr. Lu swallowed nervously. He picked up his phone and slowly walked toward it. "Brothers, the doll lying on this bed might wake up. But that's just a lie," he muttered, slowly moving closer, using the camera to get a closer shot. Suddenly, the doll woke up, its head covered by a red scarf. Mom, look at my red wedding dress. Don't let me die too soon." In Mr. Lu's eyes, the doll began to sing. The voice was filled with hatred and malice, causing him to shudder violently. Suddenly, the doll raised its head. Through the gap in the red scarf, Mr. Lu saw a pair of red eyes and a face that had been horribly mutilated. "Why am I so miserable? Mom, the red wedding dress on my head." The doll's words echoed in the room. As the doll slowly unwrapped the scarf, It revealed a blood-stained face. Do you want to use your blood to stain my wedding dress? The woman in the wedding dress stared at Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu's phone trembled in his hands. He screamed, stumbling backward, taking 2 steps. This is fake, he muttered, trying to convince himself that it was all just an illusion. He stared at the woman covered in blood and pointed his phone at her. Brothers, everyone, this ghost prop isn't bad. This doll looks like a real person, he said, his voice shaky. He quickly turned on the comment display function on his phone. At that moment, he desperately needed comments to calm his nerves. After all, there were viewers watching, and the comments would ease his anxiety. One comment popped up. Mr. Liu. This is just a normal doll. Why are you so scared? Another one said, yeah, it looks like it doesn't have money. It's so old, the paint is worn off. Mr. Liu read the comments, his terror increasing. In the blink of an eye, he froze. The doll, which had seemed so real, now appeared to be nothing more than a prop. It had clearly been made with a large budget. Panicked, Mr. Liu turned off the comments and looked back at his phone screen. It now showed a normal doll, sitting lifeless on the bed. Its makeup smudged. It's impossible, Mr. Liu muttered as he rubbed his eyes and looked at the phone again. It was just a regular doll, nothing special. But when he looked up from the phone, directly at the doll, a woman with a blood-stained face and eyes full of hatred was staring back at him. Do you want to use your blood to stain my wedding dress? My red wedding dress. The woman's voice was filled with deep malice, sending a shiver through Mr. Liu. The air around him grew heavy with the scent of fresh blood. And the room seemed to close in on him. The door behind him slammed shut. Mr. Liu's heart raced as coldness swept through his body. Yes, this is a ghost, Mr. Liu thought, his body trembling as a chilling sensation wrapped around him. The cold felt like barbed wire on his skin, a burning sensation spreading across his body. Do you want to use your blood to make my red wedding dress? The woman's voice echoed in his ears, accompanied by a gust of cold air. Mr. Liu turned around, and before him appeared a pale, bloodied face. Ah! Mr. Liu screamed, stepping back and stumbling toward the window. Don't. His voice was barely a whisper. He was about to jump through the window to escape when, on the other side, he saw a pair of red eyes staring directly at him. It was the same woman who had just appeared behind him. Red wedding dress. Red wedding dress. Red wedding dress. The woman whispered, her smile grotesque as half of her face appeared to be torn, revealing sharp teeth. Your blood is very fragrant. Mr. Liu's eyes filled with fear as he backed away, his body shuddering. He touched something cold, and the icy sensation spread from his feet to his head. Suddenly, his feet felt itchy, as if a cold hand were scratching them. He was still wearing shoes, yet the sensation was real. My red wedding dress. Can you make milk with me? A cold gust of air passed from his neck. With a scream of horror, Mr. Liu fainted on the spot. As he fell, his body twitched twice. The audience watching the live stream was left stunned. Why did Mr. Liu suddenly faint? The viewers were in shock. On the screen, they saw Mr. Liu lying motionless on the ground, and a chill ran through the crowd. At that moment, she had hidden in the room with him. She had intended to stay next to the doll's bed, pretending not to wake up, but someone had touched her feet. This ghost house is absolutely problematic, the viewer thought. Mr. Liu's teeth chattered, his face bloodied. At that moment, the other 3 boys heard the noise and rushed to his side. The boy wearing glasses pushed the door open and stepped in. They saw Mr. Liu lying unconscious on the ground. The bravest and strongest boy of the group turned pale, completely losing consciousness. What's going on? The 3 boys exchanged confused looks. Mr. Liu had always been the strongest among them, yet now he was lying unconscious on the floor. The boy wearing glasses stepped forward to check Mr. Liu's condition. He's okay. He just fainted, the boy said, looking at his 2 friends. Maybe we should retreat for now. All right, let's go back and come back tomorrow to fight again, said one of the others. Neither of them wanted to continue with the ghost hunt now that one of their own had fainted. The boy with glasses decided. You 2 help Mr. Liu up. I'll go ahead and scout the path. After saying that, He picked up the phone that Mr. Liu had dropped and turned on the flashlight. The light illuminated the dark room, which suddenly didn't seem as terrifying. However, as they moved away from the yard and returned to the gate, they were all shocked. The audience watching the live stream was left dumbfounded. What are these three doing? The viewers thought. The three boys didn't faint, but it seemed like they were acting as if they couldn't. The only thing they could see was the boy wearing glasses holding the phone and the faintest light from the flashlight.